Hello and welcome to Bread of Life. This week, Pastor Riendeau of Bloomfield reminds us to pray for the persecuted church, this Sunday being the International Day of Prayer for the Persecuted Church.
Hello, beloved ones. I'm so happy to be with you today by radio in the sovereignty of God. Each November, churches around the world take either the first or second Sunday of the month and pray for the persecuted church. We've been doing so at our church for about 15 years now, and it's been an honor to do so. I hope your church is praying for our persecuted brothers and sisters in some way this year. Now, in honor of this emphasis, I'd like to spend this week thinking about persecution. I'd like to do so by considering a passage in Matthew chapter 10, where Jesus commissions his followers to go and proclaim him despite the opposition they'll face. So today I want to look at the first two verses, 16 and 17. Jesus says, "I'm sending you out like sheep among wolves. Therefore, be as shrewd as snakes and as innocent as doves. Be on your guard. You'll be handed over to the local councils and be flogged in the synagogues." In the Greek language, this section begins with idou, which means behold. In other words, listen up. Jesus is sending them out like sheep in the middle of wolves. Israel is frequently equated to powerless sheep in the midst of powerful Gentiles looking to rip them apart. And Jesus seizes on this idiom and urges them with another one. Be as shrewd as snakes and as innocent as doves. What does that mean? Well, the King James, I think, words it, be as wise as serpents and harmless as doves. And this probably fits better, to be honest with you. I like how Dallas Willard summarizes this key command. He says this, quote, "What is the wisdom of the snake? It is to be watchful and observant until the time is right to act. One rarely sees a snake chasing its prey, but when it acts quickly and decisively. And as for the dove, it does not contrive. It is incapable of intrigue. It's in this sense harmless," unquote. Jesus is telling them that they need to be very careful as they enter enemy territory. They should not naively think that everyone's nice. At the same time, they're to be straight shooters and not pretend to be something they're not. Warren Wiersbe said we're to be tough-minded and tender-hearted. This kind of practical wisdom couched in gentleness is necessary because of how tough the environment Jesus' followers will find themselves in. Verse 17, Jesus says, "Be on your guard, don't be naive. You'll be handed over to the local councils and be flogged in the synagogues." The local councils at this time were composed of about 23 members who would decide on discipline when the law was broken. The most severe penalty was flogging, which involved being brutally whipped on the chest and then the back up to 39 times. As it was done, one man would read out relevant scriptures, another would count the whippings, and a third would give the command to flog. This is what Jesus is telling them is awaiting them as they represent him. And yet they still go. Brothers and sisters, some of our brethren around the world are suffering like this right now, even as I speak. We need to pray for them. We need to ask God to strengthen them, to enable them to see Christ lifted up, seated on high. They need to be able to be assured, just like Stephen was when he looked up high, that Christ is with them, even in their worst times of trouble and strife. The rest of this week, I'll be sharing some particular stories of people being persecuted. But for now, as we enter into this week, I would just challenge each of us to ask, am I willing to undergo whatever opposition is required for those who would faithfully follow Jesus? Father, I pray for our persecuted brothers and sisters. I pray that you give them great wisdom as they go about their lives. Help them to be tough-minded and tender-hearted. And when they suffer, give them grace to endure for your sake. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
You've been listening to Pastor Riendeau of Bloomfield talking about the persecuted church and reminding us that this Sunday is the International Day of Prayer for the Persecuted Church. This has been Bread of Life. a program to encourage you from God's Word.